So, you know that feeling when you just finished a perfectly normal, maybe 5-minute conversation, you say goodbye, walk away, and suddenly you're totally trapped in this messy, exhausting aftermath. Literally 1 minute you're waving goodbye, and the next, your brain has launched a full scale 2-hour internal investigation. You're not just casually thinking about the interaction, you are forensically dissecting it. Well, welcome to our explainer on the psychological autopsy of a conversation, where we're going to unpack exactly why your brain completely refuses to let go of the things you say.
Right away, you start replaying the moment, and then your brain just starts firing off. Why did I say that? You're immediately trying to picture exactly what the other person might have thought. You try to vividly remember their facial expression. Was it a grimace? You analyze the exact tone of their voice. You literally replay the entire conversation again from start to finish, just desperately hunting for clues.
And the questions just keep coming, faster and faster. Did I sound stupid? Your mind is racing now, completely picking apart your own vocabulary, the timing of that one joke you made, even the specific way you laughed. The really strange thing happening here is that your brain isn't just trying to remember the conversation, it's desperately trying to solve it, kind of like a giant puzzle with a missing piece.
Okay, wait, did they notice I was nervous? Should I have answered differently? What if they completely misunderstood what I meant? See, your brain is actively searching for missing information. And here's the real catch. The more uncertain the interaction feels, the more addictive the overthinking becomes. Your mind actually gets hooked on the ambiguity of it all. Okay, let's dive right into part 1, the unresolved conversation. To actually understand why we obsess over these tiny moments, we have to look at how our brains are wired. Essentially, human brains are giant prediction machines. They're designed to anticipate what happens next so they can keep us safe, which means they absolutely hate uncertainty. When you don't know exactly what someone thought about you, your mind is missing a clear, definitive answer. And because nature abhors a vacuum, your brain just starts generating endless, unverifiable possibilities to fill that void. Maybe they liked you. Maybe they thought you were super weird. It just keeps searching for an answer, mistaking an unresolved memory for a deeply important one. But listen, just because something is unresolved doesn't mean it actually matters.
Which brings us to section 2, the spotlight bias.
So why does your brain specifically lock onto those awkward pauses, treating the memory like an active crime scene? I mean, you rarely spend 20 minutes analyzing a sentence that was completely normal, right? Instead, you hyper-focus on the mistakes. Well, this is driven by the spotlight effect. We constantly, consistently overestimate how much other people notice us. You obsess over your own awkward sentence because, well, you were there for every grueling second of it. But the other person, they were never inside your head experiencing all that internal nervousness. You see, you are the main character of your own experience, not theirs. Think about it like this. You might agonizingly remember something slightly embarrassing you did like 5 years ago, but can you remember a stranger's awkward moment from last Tuesday? Probably not. Other people simply aren't analyzing our behavior with the same intense microscopic detail that we are.
Moving on to section 3, the illusion of control.
Now, this is where the overthinking loop gets incredibly frustrating. Your brain creates this false illusion that if you just analyze the past conversation enough times, you can somehow magically change it or retroactively discover the perfect response. And this really highlights the absolutely crucial difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection is productive, saying, okay, I should communicate more clearly next time, leads to learning. But asking, oh man, what if I had said this instead, and then spending an hour imagining fake responses? Well, that's rumination. It's just living inside a fake conversation that literally no longer exists. Because, and this is important, thinking isn't always solving. We kind of assume that because we're actively thinking about something, we're being productive. But in reality, this exhaustive analysis is just a misguided defense mechanism. Your brain is trying to protect your future self from embarrassment by finding out exactly what went wrong. But this protective mode becomes a massive problem when it never ever switches off. Let's slow down a bit for section 4, the hidden root fear. We really need to confront the underlying motive here. Ask yourself what you're actually afraid happened in that interaction. Because the real fear, it usually isn't about an awkwardly phrased sentence. It's a much deeper terror. They think I'm stupid, they don't like me, they're judging me. When these thoughts pop up, you're no longer analyzing a casual chat about the weather or a project at work. You are interrogating your own social survival. And it really all boils down to this incredibly powerful realization. You are analyzing your own worth
through someone else's imagined opinion. You're attempting to control every single thought another human being has about you. And that is an impossible, totally unwinnable game. You can control your communication, sure, but you absolutely cannot dictate their interpretation.
All right, Section 5. Facts versus interpretations.
Look, just telling an overthinker to stop thinking inevitably fails. Honestly, it just makes you think about why you can't stop thinking. Instead, we need a really concrete framework to dismantle the thoughts by separating what actually happened from the fictional stories our brains invent. For example, they paused before answering. Okay, that's an objective fact. But they were uncomfortable with me? That's your anxious interpretation filling the gap. They replied with one word is a fact. They're angry with me is just a story.
The brain just naturally fills uncertain gaps with stories. That's what it does. So your job isn't to magically eliminate your brain's ability to create these anxious narratives. Honestly, that's impossible. Your real job is to successfully recognize them and label them correctly. Okay, this is an interpretation, not evidence. Because once you label the story, it completely loses its power over your reality. And finally, Section 6, letting the conversation end. We really need to replace that frantic, panicked interrogation from the beginning of this explainer with a set of grounding questions so we can finally close the case file. So the next time you catch yourself looping, ask yourself, what do I actually know for sure? What am I just assuming based on fear? And finally, is there anything useful I can do about it right now? If there is an action to take, like, apologizing or clarifying, then do it. But if not, you have to recognize that spending another hour analyzing it is completely useless. Because the haunting, but honestly ultimately freeing truth is this: the only thing keeping the conversation alive right now is you. The actual interaction ended hours, maybe even days ago. Learning exactly when to let a conversation end in your own mind is far, far more important than discovering the perfect comeback you wish you had said. But there's another psychological pattern that's even harder to escape. What happens when the spotlight effect turns entirely inward? Well, we'll explore that in our next explainer, when your own mind becomes the person you can't stop trying to impress.